Okay, so Pavan, take me back to the summer of 2020. What were some of the series of moments that led to your trigger to start your RNT journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I'd actually been looking for a fitness company for a while. I started training in 2015 and I'd had a few personal trainers, but hadn't really sort of got anything from it that I wanted. So I've been looking for a fitness company for a while and reached out to a few, but just got really disappointing responses. It was more like just a copy and paste answer saying everything's on the website. So I actually emailed you first in December 2019. I don't know if you remember, because somebody had recommended RNT and I went on the website and read about the 5 phases and thought, this is really interesting. This is really different. And so when you actually replied and it was a response from like a real person, I like really sat up and paid attention. Um, and then we sort of went back and forth over the course of a few months at that point. But it was only until the lockdown really hit in March 2020 when I sort of circled back and really dove into your website and was like, read the education section. I couldn't believe that it was all free. I went down a rabbit hole of just reading stuff, and I looked at the site and thought, oh, there's probably going to be a point where I have to pay, like they're going to make me log in. And that just never happened. And I couldn't believe there was all this free content. And so I then came across the sort of the case studies, and it was reading the case studies and how people had talked about how it really helped them overcome all these challenges that really got me interested. And I knew I had some challenges coming up in life. So I thought, wow, this has helped all these people. I need a fitness company. I really relate to this. Why would I not do this? Um, but actually, it was the why behind your why exercise. I don't know if you get new people to still do that, but it was that exercise that really forced me to sign up, because I remember this was around May time I was looking, and I didn't sign up till I think July for the September start. So I really took that time to really think about it in detail. We were in lockdown. I wasn't working at the time. I had nothing else to do. So I spent a load of time thinking about it. And it was really that exercise that really pushed me to sort of sign up with you guys, that and reading the case studies in combination, I'd say.
And what was the what were some of the discoveries in that why behind your why exercise that made you think, right, enough's enough?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't happy with the way I looked, essentially. When I looked in the mirror, I wasn't happy with it. I had really low self-confidence. And I deep down knew where it was all stemming from. And that was I wasn't really being my true self in all areas of my life. And I was carrying a really big secret that I needed to tell my parents, and that was that I needed to tell them I was gay. So it was like I was living one life outside of the house and one life at home. Not that I would come home and become a completely different person, but it's just a burden and a weight on your shoulders that you're carrying. And I knew I wouldn't be able to live the life that I wanted if I didn't tell them. Um, so my why is, and has never really changed since day one, is to be a confident man who is my authentic self in every situation I'm in. That's the reason why I started, and that's not changed. And I knew I was never going to get there unless I faced up and had that conversation. So knowing that that's what I needed to do, I knew this journey would help me do that because I'd read that it helped so many other people. Yeah.
What about this journey do you think, right, this is what's going to help me make this big shift in your life?
Yeah. I think it was how, it's what you talk about, the physical is the vehicle, right? Like I didn't really know what you meant at that point. All I knew was reading sort of about the process and about what people had written in the case studies was that, it helps you mentally, you get clarity, you get more confidence, you have more self-belief, you realize that you're capable of doing more than you are. And it's not something that I just kind of put my faith in it, really. That was it. Like I just read it and put my faith in it. I was like, you've been trying other things for so many years.
Mm.
None of that's worked. And it's hard to put into words. It just felt different. Like you guys weren't like a normal fitness company, or, it was almost like there was a spiritual aspect to it. Like, I remember you talked about, you used to guys talk about a lot about journaling, and I used to journal a lot. And I was like, well, I'm already doing a lot of this stuff. So maybe if I just kind of slot into these guys' process, it'll sort of everything will just sort of click. And it absolutely did eventually. But I almost just kind of put my faith in you guys and was like, this helps so many other people. Why would it not help me? Because, there were so many similarities between all the case studies. I was like, all of these people can't be wrong. All of these people can't be making it up.
Yeah. So describe how you were feeling before RNT. Like, you're carrying this massive burden. It was obviously, it was then that was essentially the deep muck, right? And then it was manifesting itself in sort of destructive behaviors around food, around how you saw yourself in the mirror, etc. Describe that feeling and that thought process and what was going through your mind at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I had really low self-confidence, like really, really low self-confidence. And in terms of physically, the way I looked, I really felt like I didn't fit in. And a lot of that stemmed from social media and feeling like I needed to look a certain way. The other thing is, if you go on sort of gay dating apps, you look at pictures and it's just, full of, muscle guys. People on their profiles will write things like, muscled guys only. To people will even write things like no Asians, but that's a different conversation, like so explicitly.
Wow.
And and from the age of like my early 20s, this is what I'm seeing. And I'm thinking, oh, I need to look like this if I'm going to fit in, if I'm ever going to, meet someone. And that was essentially my why, which I now know is the wrong why. But just seeing that for years and years, and then trying to, improve my body physically and not seeing results, I was just going round and round in circles and just feeling like despair, or I'm never going to look like that. And then it does get you into a mental cycle of sort of spiraling downwards. And I noticed it was sort of impacting my relationships with people where, I've got a great group of close friends. There's 5 of us who I'm really, really close with. And they were literally the only people who I would ever feel like completely comfortable and like I could be myself around. At work, I was really, really quiet. It was sort of impacting my ability to connect with people, my relationships with people, and even sort of with, other people in my family, like my cousins. I never really felt like I fitted in around them. And eventually you just start to feel really lonely. It's like, okay, I've got my friends, but it's not like you're around them all the time. You just don't want to feel like you just can't be yourself, right? That's essentially what it was. I was not able to be myself. And eventually that just weighs on you really, really heavily to a point where you just don't want to feel like that anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What was some of the self-dialogue that you're giving yourself?
You're not good enough. You're never going to achieve that. So when it came to like work, like going for promotion, I would just have this dialogue, oh, you're never going to achieve that. I would overthink a lot. So if somebody had said something to me, or if somebody said something to me, I would sort of really, really overthink it and like catastrophize in my head a lot about things. And sort of blow things, make a mountain out of a molehill, like blow things out, but really internalize it. So I wouldn't really talk about it to people, think, oh, he said this, or I'm thinking this. I would really just keep it to myself.
Yeah.
And that's just not a good place to be. That's a real downward spiral.
And what sort of behaviors would that manifest in from a physical perspective? Obviously, this is what's going on in your mental health and in between your ears. But how did that manifest itself physically?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a foodie. So I've never really like used food as like a crutch. I'm really not that food focused, but I don't think it had many physical effects, but I did withdraw from people sort of relationship wise. I found I was, withdrawing from my parents a lot. It got to a point where I wouldn't even want to sit and have dinner with them. I wouldn't even want to be in the same room as them for too long. If we were going on a long journey, I'd kind of find reasons to go in a different car or sit in or make sure there was someone else in the car with me, so I wouldn't sort of be around them, because the anxiety was just so bad, social anxiety, I mean. So yeah, that those were sort of the kind of behaviors. It wasn't, and then I wouldn't train, I wouldn't go to the gym. So I'd go through periods where I'd train consistently, and then I would just drop off a cliff for like 2 months. Then it's like back to square one kind of thing. So self-care sort of went out of the window in that sense, but it was really affecting like the relationships I had with sort of people. Yeah.
What about your romantic relationships? How are they when you're carrying this burden?
Yeah. I mean, I never really like had a serious romantic relationship at that time. It was, again, because I would sort of enter into something and then back off, because I would just, again, I would overthink things and go, oh, if this even goes anywhere, how's that going to work? Because it's not like I'm ever going to, like, at that point, the dialogue in my head was, oh, I'm never going to tell mom and dad. So how is this ever going to materialize into anything? So that is a bit of a sadness I have, if I'm honest. And I think about that a lot. I know it's not good to live in the past, but sometimes I can't help but think, like, what would my life have been like if I'd done this a lot earlier? Like if I'd done this in my early 20s. So yeah, it did kind of hold me back in those relationships as well, you could say. Yeah.
Before we talk about how it all unraveled and changed for you, let's talk about how the process was like when you started this journey. So you were aware of RNT for nearly a year. You're very familiar with the methodologies, the concepts, the philosophy. How did you find getting started on your journey in sort of mid to late 2020?
If I'm honest, I found it quite easy because, I'd been training fairly consistently. Yeah, I had periods when I was on and off, but I was used to sort of going to the gym. And actually at that point, I've been really consistent because the gyms were shut, I had the equipment in the garage. I was still training all the time. I was used to meal prepping, even though I do it on and off. I was sort of used to the habit of it. So I knew, steps was a big part of it. So I actually started doing that beforehand. So the start of the journey, I didn't really find that difficult. And, like I said, I really just kind of put my faith in you guys and threw myself into it. So, the meal plan that Ivan gave me, I just kind of was like, I'm just going to eat this. And, food is really not a thing for me. Like, people find it really weird when I say that. Like, I just view food as something you have to eat to stay alive. So I don't get a lot of pleasure from eating certain foods. It's just like, I'll eat whatever is the right thing for me to eat to be healthy. I didn't really understand that when I didn't have much education. But so the start of the process was actually not that bad. And it was around that time that I actually had that conversation with my parents. So that really then forced me to double down on the journey as well, at that time.
So you coincided them pretty closely.
Yeah, as in, I didn't know I was going to do it then, but yeah, it just so happened that I sort of, towards the start, very early on, I kind of sat them down and had that chat with them. Yeah.
What about the journey do you think made you think, right, for nearly how many years had it been you'd kept in?
I was 30 when I told them.
So almost 30 years you kept the secret in.
Yeah.
What about the RNT journey, or the journey that's starting the journey, made you think, right, now is the time to have this conversation, like arguably the hardest conversation you're ever going to have in your life?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind, and what changed all of a sudden?
Yeah, I think
because I'm assuming this was something you'd probably be wanting to have
pretty much since your teens,
right?
Actually, I'd kind of just accepted I was never going to do it. Like, I'd sort of just resigned to that fact. And then for many years. And then it was only sort of in my late 20s, I'd say, that I started to think more and more seriously about it. And so I guess the defining moment for me was the why behind your why exercise. When I thought about the kind of life I want for myself, I thought, this is never going to happen, going down this path. I don't want a life where I don't have meaningful relationships with people. I don't want a life where I'm withdrawing from the people around me who I love. Where's that going to get me? So I guess, so I feel like my journey very much started before it officially started. So in the summer. So that was the time you could say that I really made up my mind in terms of, and then from then to the point I actually did it was just, getting prepared to do it. So my friends and everyone I work with, literally everyone outside my life, kind of outside of my home life, knew.
Oh wow, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so they were massively supportive, but I actually reached out to a couple of other people I knew and they gave me some really good advice. So, I always felt like, I would tell my parents first and I would tell sort of my cousins and everyone else, after, because I wanted them to hear it first. But someone said to me, look, if it's not going to be easy, so if you feel like there are people in your family who you trust, then maybe have that conversation with them just so you have a bit of support. So then, I sat sort of my cousins down and told them that, three that I'm close with, and I knew they'd be totally fine. They were massively supportive. And then when I knew I had them on board, it was then a case of, right, when am I going to tell mum and dad? And that was because I'd made up my mind I was going to do it. That was literally just logistics. It was like, right, what weekend are we all at home not doing anything? And so I actually decided sort of 2 days before I did it that, okay, I'm going to do it this Saturday. So yeah, to answer your question, that's a lot of rambling, but to answer your question, it was really that why behind your why of like actually taking the time to sit down, visualize my life. How do I want it to be? That made me make the decision. And then it was just a case of like putting things in place to really do it, I think.
How did it feel?
When I told them?
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, to the point where I couldn't even say the words. So this is a big thing, I think, when it comes to doing that, especially with your parents, especially with Indian parents. It's like, you don't really talk about like sex or that kind of stuff. And that's basically what you're doing when you're coming out. You're basically saying to your parents, this is who I'm physically attracted to, who I like to, whatever. So I hadn't actually thought, this is one error I made. I didn't really think about the language I was going to use or how I was going to say it. So I kind of sat them down to say it. And then like the words just weren't coming out. And basically a lot of the anxiety that I was feeling around that time was around like, their conversations around marriage, why haven't you met someone? And so the way I did it was I basically just said, look, I'm never going to get married to a woman. That's kind of how I said it. The reaction wasn't great. And some of the things they said weren't great. And I thought I would feel like this massive weight off my shoulders as soon as I did it. But when I saw the way they sort of reacted, it was sort of worse than I thought it would be. And that just left me thinking, oh my God, like, what have I done, kind of thing. That was my initial sort of response, like, oh my God, what have I done? They're never going to kind of be on board. So that was sort of the immediate response, you could say. And then there were sort of a few other conversations in the days following. But and in that time, so in the days after, I was really, really angry with them, like really, really angry. We're living in a house, we're not speaking to each other, or like they were trying to speak to me, I wasn't speaking to them. And then eventually I just got to a point where I was like, this isn't going to get me anywhere. Like the anger is not going to get me anywhere. And I had to just sit down and try and see it from their perspective. And essentially what it is, for parents, it is the fact that, when you have a child, you have a vision for what their life is going to be like. And when they sit you down and say, your child sits you down and says, I'm gay, that vision totally goes out of the window. So they're sat there thinking, oh my God, what's your life going to be like? And they have no idea because they've never sort of thought about it. It's not anything they've ever like had to fathom or thought of it as a real possibility. So I get that's really, really, really difficult. But I thought the only way I'm going to get around that is I need to kind of have a bit more compassion and empathy for their point of view. So and then eventually I started to feel like, okay, you've done the hardest bit now. They kind of, obviously emotions are heightened, and with time, everything calms down a bit. And then after a while, once once I had that time to just think and realize that in my head, that's when I felt the weight off my shoulders, and I thought, right, this is the problem. I need to now think of a solution to kind of, take them on that journey. The difficult thing is, though, you can't force someone to do anything. It's like you guys always say, you can take the horse to walk, but you can't force them to drink, right? Especially when there's another person involved. So that was the challenging thing, like getting them to sort of engage with it. Yeah.
How did you approach that?
So the thing I've still never really understood is what did they actually think? A lot of the reaction was around, what are other people going to think? What are we going to tell people? And so my way of overcoming that was to say to them, look, you're not the first Asian parents to go through this. You're not the first, family to go through this. There are people you can speak to, if you've got questions, I'm more than happy to sit and answer any questions that you've got. There's people that we know who are quite close to us who've also been through this, and you can speak to them. So it was more because that was the problem. The problem was, their main problem was, what are other people going to think? I was trying to show them that, look, they're not going to think anything. Look, everyone's been through this. Not everyone, but many people have been through this. But at that point, they just weren't ready. They just weren't ready to sort of engage with that. It was too early. So I said, look, I just said to myself, look, they just need time. So, I've kind of done what I can for now. They just need time to process. And I thought, you've had like 15 years, from being a teenager to 30, however long, to kind of go on your own journey of accepting yourself and getting to this point. They need time as well. Obviously not 15 years, but they need time. And it was really just me trying to put myself in their shoes as much as possible. And I spoke to other people as well who've been through it with their parents, and what did they go through? But at that point, I realized I just needed to give them time. Yeah.
For anyone who's listening who might feel like they're in a similar situation where they're carrying a big secret, maybe the same secret, or maybe just a very heavy burden, what's some of the best advice you can give them right now?
What I would say is, the first, if you're going to have this conversation with someone, the chances are they're quite close to you. So, it's not the kind of thing you sit everyone down and do, right? So you know them quite well. Your chances are you're going to know what their reaction is going to be. They're not, some people might surprise you. So just have a plan. So if you're not going to get a good reaction and you might need some space, just figure out, like, is there somewhere you can go? Like, I mean, I didn't tell anyone I was going to do it, but I knew I had 5 people that I could call any one of them if I did need to leave, and I could just go there. So just have a plan for, like, afterwards, if you do need a bit of space. The other thing I'd say is, like I said earlier, just have a think about the language you're going to use and how you're going to say it, because saying the words "I'm gay" when you're in that moment it doesn't come as easy as you might think it does. So have a think about that. But also, it's, don't do it until you're ready to do it. Don't do it because you feel like pressure from society, or you're like, I'm at a certain age now, I have to do it. Do it when you're ready. You'll know within yourself when you're ready to do it. And don't do it before then. You should only do it when you are absolutely ready, or you feel like you're absolutely ready. And if you feel like you can have someone there to support you, then have them there. But the biggest advice is, don't do it until you're ready, because it's a massive life change. It's a massive thing you're doing. You have to be absolutely ready within yourself, not because someone else is telling you, or you feel pressure to do it from someone else.
What does being ready mean in this situation?
That's a good question. It means that you've sort of made up your mind that this is the right decision for you, and that whatever happens afterwards, you're ready to deal with that. So in my mind, what that, I'd kind of played out what the worst scenario would be is that, like, by my parents wouldn't speak to me again, like I'd be disowned or whatever. And, the chances of that happening were quite small, even though the reaction wasn't great. The fact that they would go that far, I knew that was quite small. But in my head, I was prepared for, if that is the outcome, then fine, so be it. Like, I'm sort of ready to deal with that. So that's what you need to kind of, that's sort of what I meant earlier by having a plan as well. Like, there's a short-term plan of what you're going to do then, but there's the long-term plan as well. Like, what, are you going to be okay? So if you're in a position where you're not financially independent, just thinking about practical things, what are you going to do in that sense? For example, things like that, like make sure you're ready, like you have your plan in place. And it might sound really kind of far-fetched and extreme, but there are a lot of people who go through that where, teenage kids are sort of told to leave, parents don't want to know them, and they just have to figure it out, and that's I think when you're that young, you don't really think about those things. But it's sort of this kind of stuff that you need to kind of get your head around and sort of consider. Yeah.
You said you went through your own journey of it, your own acceptance, like accepting this is you, this is your real self. Talk us through that, because that's, again, society saying you shouldn't be like this, and community saying you shouldn't be like this.
Yeah.
How did you come to your own acceptance before even seeking acceptance of your closest family?
I never really went through so a lot of gay men go through a period where they try and deny it, or they think that they're bi, or they try and live that straight life. I never really did that. So I never really tried to date girls, or like do any of that kind of stuff. So in that sense, I never really like rejected myself. For me, it was more around being able to just be myself in my everyday life, So, I've been asked this question quite a few times when you talk to other people, and I don't think I really give a very helpful answer, because I never really sort of rejected myself, if that makes sense. I always knew within myself, like, this is who I am. The challenge was more around being able to share that with other people. And I think, so I guess in terms of acceptance from society, which is part of your question, you need to have people around you who you can, this goes back to just having meaningful relationships, not in terms of this particular issue, but just in general. Who are the people in your life who, support you no matter what, make you feel good, make you feel supported, make you feel secure? For me, that's my friends. I've got a great group of 5 friends, and that's them. For other people, it might be their siblings, their parents, whoever. But that's how I kind of got the confidence to fully be myself. In terms of, accepting yourself, it is just a journey you have to go on. But I find it difficult to answer that question, because I never really had that sort of battle within me that I'm not gay. I never really thought that. Yeah.
You hear of some people who they'll marry women and they'll have kids, and then they're fighting that internal battle. Have you come across those sorts of people?
And yeah, I mean, I mean, it's really sad, the fact that they've had to go through that. There's, I think last year or the year before, Philip Schofield, sort of, he's married, got grown-up children, came out as gay on TV, and he's lived his whole life just, not being able to be himself, pretending to be someone else. And everyone's journey is their own. The really sad thing about that, though, is that you are impacting someone else's life as well. that's the worst thing about that, I think, because it's I don't know. I feel like maybe I need to be careful what I said, but I think going down that path is selfish. Now, I understand, there's people who live in other countries where, it's illegal to be gay, where you could be killed if anyone finds out. So I have great sympathy for that. And I understand why you might do that why you might go down that path if you're in that situation where your life is in danger. Like it's a very different scenario. So I'm not talking about that. But I think there's no one's forcing you to do that. You might feel like you're being forced to do that, but you're not really. It is a choice to do that. And so I don't think I don't think it's the right path that anyone should really go down. So it's something I find really hard to relate to, because I never ever considered that. And I know how bad what kind of a bad place I was in my 20s, where I thought I was never going to tell mom and dad. But I never ever thought that. I knew I was never ever going to sort of marry a woman. I was never going to, engage in that. I was never going to indulge in any of those conversations with my parents. I just made up my mind. So people who do that, I don't know. I'm not in their shoes. I'm not in their position, but I just knew I was never going to do that, and so I find it hard to relate to people who do go down that path, because I was in an equally difficult position, but everyone's situation is different, right? So
of course, what's your relationship been like with your parents since?
It's challenging at times. They're not fully accepting. There's still work to be done, but I think we're in a place where I've sort of given them all the tools I can. They need to go on their own journey now, right? To engage with that. I can't force them to. I can't make them educate themselves, engage, try and accept. They have to kind of go on that journey themselves. I think what I have established is boundaries, I would say, where I've made it very clear that this is sort of it. This isn't like a negotiation, or nothing's going to change, basically. So your only option is to accept it. Like, not accepting it is not really an option. I mean, you can choose to not accept it, but that's just burying your head in the sand or whatever. So I've just had to be quite firm, almost ruthless in a way, and that's a challenge in itself. It comes with a lot of guilt, feelings of guilt, where I go through so many different times where I feel massively guilty, and then I feel angry, and then I feel like really bad, like, oh, you're putting so much pressure on yourself, what if something happens? Sorry, you're putting so much pressure on them, what if something happens to them? But one thing I have actually been thinking about a lot and realized is that when it comes to family, just because they're your family, it doesn't give them a free pass in your life. Like, your family still should be serving you in a positive way. And if they aren't, then you need to reassess your relationship with them. And it's very easy to do that with around you, with sort of other people around you. But when it comes to your family, specifically your parents and your siblings, that's not an easy thing to do. But it is something that you need to consider. And that's sort of the space I'm in at the moment, where I haven't quite figured it out, but it's what I'm thinking about a lot. Like, if this was to continue, this isn't a sustainable position to be in. So what does that mean? And there is an internal battle of guilt and feeling selfish, but then are you really being selfish just because you want to kind of live your life the way you want to? So that's kind of where I'm at, the space I'm in at the moment. Yeah.
Have you introduced them to any of your partners, or?
No, there's no one to introduce them to. So
there's no one. Okay, so there's no one. That's the next battle then.
That's the next battle. Yeah, that is the next battle when I get there.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
Not really something I'm thinking about. I'll just cross that bridge when I come to it. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I guess it's not been that long that you've been able to live a normal, quote unquote, normal life for yourself.
Yeah.
So this all happened at the end of 2020.
Yeah.
How's how's the journey allowed you to double down on really like making sure this is the way, this isn't, what's the right way to say this? This isn't temporary in terms of your conviction and your confidence and your courage that you've done to do something so life-changing. What's happened since then? Because you mentioned at the beginning you doubled down on the journey when things got difficult. Talk us through how the journey's been there, and what obstacles you face on this journey, alongside the other journey that you've been on, because there's a lot of things going on in your life there that
I mean, I guess so. I mean, if I just go back to October 2020 when I told them, I was in the process phase then, fat loss phase. So I remember thinking, well, this hasn't gone great. I'm not going to kind of let that throw me off this. And it really gave me, the journey really gave me something to focus on at that time. So, I remember the morning after I had that chat, I woke up and I was just lying in bed, feeling really terrible, emotionally not in a good place. But I knew I had to do my steps. So I literally got out of bed, brushed my teeth, threw some clothes on, and just went out and did them. And I really focused on just doing the steps. I literally went into like a mode of wake up, I literally at that time just took life one step at a time. So it was, get up, go to work. I knew what I'd already planned in how I was going to kind of do my nutrition steps, workout, just do that basically. Don't think too much, just do the steps. So that really gave me something to focus on. And then I think as we moved into the investment phase, one thing that's really shown me is that as I was getting stronger and as I was lifting heavier weights, that I am capable of doing more than I think I am. I think that's what, I read somewhere, last year where it said that telling someone to believe in themselves is just pointless. No one believes in themselves more just because someone's told you to. You have to, your mind needs to see evidence of that to believe it. And I think that's what training in the gym really does, right? By pushing yourself harder, by breaking through your pain barriers, and then seeing the evidence in the fact that you're lifting heavier weights and you're getting stronger, that's when your mind starts to really believe it. And I think that is the mindset I then took to everything else in my life. So, and it's the mindset I try to approach, everything I come to with. So, with my work, last year was a really challenging, my boss left very suddenly and we were entering like the busiest 4-month period of the year, and a lot of pressure fell onto me and my team. And I've been in bad situations before and not handled them very well, but I literally just viewed it as, okay, this is going to be hard, but this is just something we have to work through. It didn't intimidate me or daunt me or fill me with fear like things might have done previously, because I knew I was capable of doing it. And ultimately, I did the thing that filled me with the most fear, right? I had that conversation with my parents, something I never thought I was going to be able to do. So now when when challenges come up or things come up that are difficult, I just think, well, you did that. So what's this? You'll sort of get through it. But I think the training aspect, like you guys always say, the physical is the vehicle. That's when it really clicked for me. That that's what I really took away from it. That learning that you are capable of doing more than you think you can, and that's sort of the mindset that I now take across everything. My life. Even the challenging relationship with mom and dad. Anything, any difficulties that come up, that's the kind of mindset I now approach it with, because I know I can. I've seen the evidence of it.
When you got into the shape of your life, how did that make you feel, knowing you'd tried it for so long? And did it change the way you operated and felt about yourself? Because you mentioned for so many years you made you feel like you weren't good enough. You saw these things on gay apps where they'd say muscle only. Did it change the way you felt, or
I definitely,
what was the experience?
I definitely felt like, I felt great, if I'm honest. I did, but I also felt like I felt like I had what am I trying to say? Like I knew how to get there. That was the thing that really was great and was about the whole journey for me, is like I've before I kind of didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. You try things and then you keep failing. It's not, it just beats you down. But the fact that I kind of knew how and, knew the process to go through to kind of get there, from training, nutrition, just the whole education, just bringing it all together. That was the thing that really made me feel good, was the fact that, now whatever happens, I know what I need to do to kind of get to this point if I need to. That was, the lifestyle solution, essentially. That I think has been the biggest positive, I think, for me.
And how have you found the investment phase? Because you've been in the investment phase now for a lengthy period of time, which is awesome.
Yeah.
How have you found, what have been some of the challenges and experiences of being in an investment phase, and why has it been so important for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, I've always wanted to build more muscle, right? That was kind of that was the, my why back in 2015 when I first started going to the gym, even though it was the wrong why at that time. That's kind of something and I've never really seen any change. So the fact that I've, seen myself get stronger is like, wow, like this really works. But I think the challenge for me was actually accepting gaining weight, that you have to kind of you have to gain weight to kind of get stronger, in that phase. And that didn't really click for me until the beginning of this year, I'd say. That, beginning of 2022, that's when I've really got to a point where I'm now comfortable with sort of looking in the mirror and looking sort of a bit heavier. But I'm seeing the sort of benefits of that in my logbook, where I'm improving each week. So I'd say the challenge has been that in terms of the investment phase. I think the thing I'm still figuring out is the whole socializing aspect. So, I had my friend's wedding a couple of weeks ago. So that was, I still got my workouts in during the week, but it was sort of late nights, eating, foods that are off plan more because, you're at social events and stuff. And that's always been like an internal conflict with me, like an internal battle, like, I shouldn't have eaten that, or, and it's not like I'm going crazy, but I kind of, up until I found I was being quite sort of reserved with what I was eating, like, whereas I'm sort of getting to a point now where I'm getting a bit more comfortable with sort of socializing and doing that comfortably, and then not having the feelings of sort of guilt afterwards, and just being like, look, just, and I think that just comes with knowing yourself and accepting yourself that, I live quite a disciplined life. And if you do have like 1 or 2 days here and there where you go and socialize and you don't eat, that strictly, then, what's the problem with that? And I'm still sort of getting there with that. Yeah.
What sort of strategies are helping you work in this lifestyle solution where you feel comfortable about eating out? Effectively have your cake and eat it, which is where we want to get to. What some of the strategies or learnings have been the biggest for you?
Yeah, I think it's just doing it and then watching how I feel and then learning from that. So when I first started, early on in the investment phase, as your calories were going up, it's like I'd go out, but I'd still be quite like mindful of what I was eating, and like only eat a little bit, and then as I started to just relax a little bit, or, have a couple of drinks, I'm not drinking alcohol, and then I'd have 1 or 2, and then train a couple of days later and actually realize that didn't really make any difference. It's not like, you were out like, on a bender. It's all right to have a couple of drinks. It's not going to make much of a difference, and actually just trying different things and seeing how it impacts or doesn't impact, and still, seeing progress happen, is kind of how I've got there. And then also just around, the education around nutrition. So looking at the menu and just thinking, right, I need to get protein in. I've got this many calories to play with. How am I going to do that? But, for me, my life says I don't really eat out that much, probably 2 or 3 days a month, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big drinker. I don't, I'll only drink at very specific occasions when I'm around specific people. And even then, not that much. So, it's just just getting comfortable with those few times that I do it.
Well, trial and error mindset is absolutely critical, right? And many people think, 6 weeks in, they're going to have the lifestyle solution where they can stay in shape year round and effortlessly. But the reality is, it's going to take a lot of trial and error on your own behalf, and take the learnings that we give you and think, how does this work in my life? Because everyone's life is different. Everyone's emotional response is different. Everyone's relationship is different. So that trial and error mindset, if you just keep that going, it's only going to get better and better and better.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm just kind of watching. I've got little strategies. So like sort of days I'm in the office, I sort of take food with me, and then I figured out like, a Pret salmon sandwich and some nuts and a banana. That's kind of like good to keep me going sort of until I get home. So it's just little things like that which you kind of figure out along the way. Yeah.
Now that you're living your authentic self, what does life look like for you, and what are you excited about for the future?
Well, I'd like to meet someone to share my life with. That's sort of something I've put off for a long time. So I'd like to do that. One thing I'm really focused on at the moment is just being able to live life where I have complete control of my time or freedom to choose how I spend my time. And, working a 9-to-5 job in the corporate world doesn't really buy you that. So I'm sort of, investing in doing things outside of work to sort of slowly transition away from the corporate world. So that's something I'm really, really focused on. And that's again, I think about things like that and go, oh, that's never going to happen. How are you going to do that? But it's actually allowed me, being more of myself has allowed me to kind of chase after those goals without fear, and do it confidently. So that's what I'm excited about at the moment. I think, meeting someone and, getting to a point where getting to a point where I can, if I want to, leave, the corporate world. I don't hate my job, but I know it's something I don't want to do forever. And, I'd love to get to a point where, have a partner, we have kids, and I can just sort of give them as much time as I need to. That was sort of one of the visions I had for myself when I started this journey. And I'm sort of taking steps to kind of get that. I know it sounds really like gay, ironically, but
amazing.
But, that is that's kind of that's it.
If you had to sum up how the physical has been the vehicle for you, what would you say?
I would say it has shown me that anything that you want to achieve, you can achieve it. You are capable of more than you think you are. The limits that you put on yourself they're all in your head, but your body and your mind is a lot more capable. Is capable of a lot more than you think it is. So just don't limit yourself to what you think you can achieve.
Amazing. And if you circle back a couple of years, what almost kept you from joining?
Honestly, it was the fact that you had to join 6 months in advance. Gosh, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 6 months, but that was literally it. And then I just got to that point where I thought, enough's enough. It's never going to be the right time. You just have to do it. But yeah, that was probably it. I'd kind of been trying the quick fixes long enough. So yeah.
And if you're speaking to someone who's at the start of their journey, or they're going through all these quick fix cycles and yo-yo diets, what would you tell them right now? Being someone who's 2 years into this incredible journey.
Someone starting RNT. I'd say
someone who's at the beginning of their journey.
Yeah, I'd say just do what you're told at the beginning is what I'd say. I'd say, and just trust the process. Do what you're told and trust the process. So, things like, if your plan says, if your plan says to eat this and to do this many steps and to do this much cardio, just do that. I mean, if obviously there's things on your plan that you can't eat, then that can be changed. But things like, can I swim instead of do steps? Just do it at the beginning. All of that stuff can be done later. But I think there's so much to think about at the beginning. Just do as you're told for the first few weeks, and then start to tweak. But just trust the process. It's a really difficult thing to do when you're when you're investing in something and you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but just trust it. That's all I'd say.
So on that, how do you trust the process if like you said, it's unknown what was coming?
Yeah, well, the reason you have a why behind why you've signed up, right? So if you can remind yourself, just constantly remind yourself, this is why I'm starting. And if you can really connect with that why, then you'll just keep going. I guess it's like dating, right? You're investing in something that you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but the reason you keep doing it is because you want that outcome, right? You want to meet someone. So it's a similar kind of thing. If you want your why to come to fruition and become a reality, you've just got to keep going with it. So just have a strong why and sort of connect with it and allow that to kind of keep you on the path.
So Pavan, what's next for you on your journey? How are you positioning yourself in this investment phase?
I'd like to continue getting stronger. So I think that's my goal. That's my target for the end of 2022. I'd like to continue building muscle, getting stronger, and then work up to a photo shoot in 2023, I think. But that's amazing. My focus, just to pack on as much muscle and just get as strong as possible this year. Yeah.
Amazing. But listen, thank you so much for being so open and honest about your story. It's stories like this that remind me why we do what we do. Because like you said, the physical is the vehicle.
Yeah.
And it gives you that focus, control, and courage and control to do things you never thought were possible. And when hearing stories like yours are the reason why I keep pushing forwards, because it's life-changing, and you're a testament to that. So thank you for your belief in the journey and for going all in and really trusting the process.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to you. I know I've said this to you before, but thanks to you for creating this company, because I really don't feel like I would be where I am in my life right now if I hadn't come across RNT. So I just want to say thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.